Hi, everyone. John Michael Coppola here, and welcome to the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast, where we chat with the actors, directors, choreographers, designers, producers, music directors, lyricists, playwrights, and all the artists who make the Chicago area theaters come alive. We're so excited to have you here with us today. But before we get started, we just want to remind you to please like, subscribe to, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues who you think would appreciate the conversations we're having. We'd be so grateful for your support in this way so we can continue to bring these stories for years to come. Thanks again for being here, and now, curtain up on today's episode. Today's guest started his theater-making career as a member of Chicago's Second City. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago, he has worked on stage and backstage throughout the area as an actor, improv performer, storyteller, director, head of marketing, and executive director. Currently the Chief Marketing and Programming Officer for the Aurora Civic Center Authority, which includes the Paramount Theater and River Edge Park in Aurora, his leadership has been integral in growing the Paramount subscriber base from 18,000 to 40,000 during his tenure. I am so excited to share my conversation with dear friend, colleague, and mentor, Jim Jarvis. Now let's go to the top of the show. All right, Jim Jarvis, here we are, take 3 of getting this podcast underway. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining us today, I got to give you a little history about why we're calling this podcast Take 3 with Jim Jarvis. So we originally recorded this podcast about 3 weeks ago. And after about 25 minutes of tech snafus, we finally got the thing working. We were like, great. We sailed through. It was a nice 45 to 60-minute interview. And,
really funny. And our banter was amazing. I smelled Jeff Award, Daytime Emmy, everything from it. We were that good.
1,000%. And, my schedule being what it is, I record these things, they go away for a while, and then I go back and revisit them a few days later to start editing them together. Well, when I did that, I discovered that Jim looked and sounded great. My audio, for some reason, was sputtering and stopping and glitchy, and my video was fine, but the audio was just awful. So I felt badly. I asked Jim if he would join me again today. I had to pay him a little bit extra this time, but we're good friends. So he gave me a bit of a discount. Other than that, I think we're going to get started and try this one final time. So Jim Jarvis.
And I do think part of it might have been automation. Part of it might have been whatever amount of martinis you had before we started the interview, which caused the stuttering and the gaps in between there. Pregnant pauses, as I believe they like to say in the theater world.
Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with you on that, but,
okay.
And now I'm going to have to ask for some of that money back because you're revealing my dirtiest secrets to our audience. But folks, as you can tell, Jim and I go way back. We banter and joke with each other all the time. But we are going to get started with our interview proper. So Jim Jarvis, my good buddy, our first question we ask everybody here on the pod is, please give our audience a little bit about your background, where you grew up, a little bit about your training, but most importantly, tell us about your first theater experience. Your turn.
Cool. Right on. So look, couldn't be more excited to be here for the third time with you, by the way. And so I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. So a good portion of my family started out in the back of the arts neighborhood, and I'm Lithuanian. So we all travel in herds when we move. So part of the herd ended up in Marquette Park, and the other ended up over on 79th and Cicero and Burbank and that whole area. So that's where I grew up. And we grew up in this really cool blue-collar community. We had theater in the area, like high school. I went to Revis High School. They had a theater program, but I played football and baseball. So I wasn't involved in any form of any of that stuff. I grew up playing the piano. My mom was a piano teacher and a pianist, and so I played for 15 years. And I gave up playing the piano for a highly successful professional football career, which never came. And my dad one day even said, he was smart. He said, look, I know part of the reason you play football is because you're trying to meet girls. When you get older, women are going to love the piano. So keep playing now and invest in your future. I heard none of that whatsoever. And in retrospect, I wish I did. So I went to Illinois State. I didn't get any kind of degree in theater, didn't study any of it. In fact, I used to be the women's assistant sports information director at Illinois State University for years. Came back, worked a bunch of corporate jobs, worked as a marketing director for a division of the Disney companies. And I got for my 30th birthday a class to take at Second City. And so I took the very introductory class in the Second City in improv, and I absolutely loved it, started taking it. And from there, I just continued on. I got into the program at Second City, graduated, ended up on one of the house teams at Improv Olympic in the early days, and it kind of evolved from there. But truthfully, for me, the first theater experience that I can remember is there was the old Drury Lane in Evergreen Park. And it was there, and it had this restaurant that we would all get dressed up. My mom, my dad, my brother, and I. And like I said, I came from a blue collar community, so we'd maybe go once a year either to see like a Christmas Carol. I went to see Hello Dolly for the very first time. That was the first thing I ever saw. We went to dinner, and then we walked up the grand staircase of that old Drury Lane in Evergreen Park, and we took the seats. And man, it was super cool for a couple hours to be able to see all that stuff. And it was weird because, like I said, man, from the South Side, nobody I knew did theater. It was, nobody did acting. It was stuff you saw on TV, but you never thought you could do any of that stuff. And then years later, I ended up working in it, and it's been nothing but a ton of fun and a ton of joy, man.
That's cool. Tell our listeners a little bit about the cohort you were with at Second City, a few famous names that they might be familiar with.
Sure. So when I was at Second City, my very first class, like just your basic introduction to improv, not even in the Second City school. The very first class I had, Tina Fey was one of my classmates, and probably about 3 or 4 weeks into it, there was another guy and I, Charles Glenn, who I met when I was in that class, and we decided we were going to start an improv troupe together. And so it was me and Charles, Tina Fey, another friend of ours, Jeff Ahern. And so we all started this improv group, and we started doing side gigs. We did actually an industrial for the West End and the Rosemont. And then when we all went over, and I went through Second City with Tina, my graduation show. And in fact, interesting enough, when she auditioned the first time out, I don't think she got in. It was the second audition, which of all the things, I mean, she's one of the most brilliant comedians and writers and actors that of our time. But we all then went to Improv Olympic together. And so it was before Improv Olympic even had its own theater. We'd play in the Wrigley side. So I got to put on a team called Inside Vladimir, and it was myself and Tina and Charles and this guy, Jeff Ahern, Jeff Clampett, Amy Poehler was on there. But I will say in those days, there was only, I think there was 5 what they called house teams. And we played at the Wrigley side bar. And so if you weren't off the stage by 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday, the band coming in would literally start setting up their speakers on the stage, which was a riot. But like on the other times, it was other teams. It was called the Family. So it was Adam McKay, who's Academy Award winner, and it was Ian Roberts and Matt Walsh and Neil Flynn, all these guys from TV, and then so Stephanie Weir from Mad TV. And so I got to be around like these 5 teams that had these amazing artists, and there was only 5 teams that played at that point. And then we played at another theater. We finally moved into the formal IO on Clark Street. But man, everything about it was just so exciting in those days, and it was new, and people were supportive. And I fell in love with it and made a transition into doing regular plays, and kind of went from there, man.
Yeah. Give me a little bit about the background of some of the plays you did. Last time we spoke on our ill-fated previous version of this podcast, you had mentioned a couple of productions of, a production of Diary of Anne Frank that you were a part of.
Right, yeah. So we had played for years at IO. Then we were part of the Playground Theater. So the Playground Theater was the first co-op artist-run improv theater in the country. Okay. It was founded by Doug Diefenbach and a bunch of folks, and we came in and we were a part of that whole thing. And so I wanted to give a shot to do, regular acting and scripted acting. So I started studying at Center Theater, which isn't around anymore, but that's how long ago it was. and started taking a bunch of classes. And my very first play that I got cast in was Diary of Anne Frank. It was for theater for young audiences out at Moraine Valley Community College
Hmm.
on the south side. I think it's called the Milken or Miken Theater. And so the interesting part was I had one line in the entire play. That was it. One line. I was a guy that they were hiding in my apartment, and we went upstairs and said my one line. But I will say, man, and I tell people this all the time, like I learned so much during that time because coming from improv, we don't do cue to cues and sit pros and like I don't know, but my conduct in a dressing room in those days in improv, I'm smoking a cigarette and snorting cocaine and drinking some booze and doing all that stuff. And you don't do that on Diary of Anne Frank. I learned that one. But like you just learn your way around everything you're supposed to learn, And I also
Yeah.
understudied Autofront. And the interesting part was when I came back the following year, I had just taken like I would audition for a ton and just kept taking every role I could get. And the following year, I came back and I auditioned for Otto and I got the role. And it was great. Like I studied the closing monologue, and that's what I auditioned with. I came in and was off book for it, and like I just absolutely fell in love with it. And so, especially I always tell people, man, having both those backgrounds as an improviser and then studying and learning how to dissect scripts and do those kind of things, it was the perfect marriage for me. And to this day, like I use my skill set in both those areas every single day of my life, even for things like you and I just hanging out talking on stage and listening to each other and yes-anding each other and all those kind of things that people don't realize, like that all comes in handy when you're an actor, an improviser, or you're working with folks.
For sure, and I'm sure it probably comes in handy in the marketing game as well. Now that you're the do all the marketing for Paramount, and before that you were the executive director of Metropolis. But let's talk about Metropolis for a second. How did you find your way of being the executive director there,
Sure.
and your tenure there, and then of course you moved over to the Paramount. So we'll transition from one to the next. Let's start us out with Metropolis.
You bet. So I went and I auditioned for their first subscription show. And their first subscription show was To Kill a Mockingbird. And I auditioned for Atticus. I didn't get the role, but I got the understudy. And I did get the role of the prosecuting attorney. So I did it, and it was great and loved it. And at the opening night party, I met Tim Rader, who was the executive director at the time of Metropolis. And he was man, he was in his early 20s, like a young executive director. And so at that time, I was still doing marketing. So I would always take on a couple of nonprofits and try to help them for free using my marketing skills. And so, I offered that to Tim. He said he could use some help. He didn't want me to do it for free. So they paid me, I think it was $7 an hour. Yeah. And I had corporate clients who were paying me 100 plus an hour, which was great. So I ended up doing a bunch of work with him. And one day he came to me and said, look, I would love for you to join our staff full time. And so I gave up my corporate clients in the corporate world for the highly lucrative, low hours, tons of benefits, nonprofit theater world. And I think we've been together now for 24 years. That when I was there, I got to work in everything, development and marketing and front of house and the box office. Tim left to go work on a project in Wheaton for the Wheaton Grand Theater. And so I ended up being the executive director there for a couple of years. And then Tim came to the Paramount Theater and he called me one day and said, hey, man, here's my plan. I'm going to do Broadway caliber shows in Aurora at the Paramount. And I'll save you the colorful expletives that I reeled off to him on stuff. But I basically said, you will either be the shortest lived CEO in the history of the arts, or you will be one of the most celebrated CEOs in the history of the arts. And to this day, he is, man. He turned it around and we went from 0 subscribers to one time our all time high before COVID was 41,000 subscribers. Incredible. I think we're at about 38,500 subscribers now. So we are the biggest subscription base in the United States for all theater, whether it's just non-musical or musical theater.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, man.
And that's crazy because, Aurora, Illinois, it's the furthest thing from a metropolis. And the only time I had ever heard of Aurora, Illinois was on the Wayne's World sketch on Saturday Night Live, and then all the movies. They had the little TV access or local
Right.
access
Yeah.
show in Aurora, Illinois. So when I had first heard about Aurora, I was like, it's not the same place Wayne and Garth is from. And you guys have just, built up the downtown area. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be a lot of indebtedness to the Paramount for bringing in all the patrons that you do now year over year.
Well, I'll
But
tell you
also,
this.
yeah, go ahead.
When I came out here to meet with Tim, it was nobody was walking around here. I mean, it literally was like a post-apocalyptic view. There was garbage all over the sidewalks. Cars were driving down Galena to get through downtown Aurora, but people weren't down here. I was on the phone with my brother, and like I said, we're the south side. And my brother literally goes, please tell me you brought a weapon with you. You're going to Aurora. Because at one point, Aurora was the murder capital of Illinois. I mean,
Oh,
tons of gang problems, all sorts of stuff. They got it cleaned up. And, it was one of the challenges we had to overcome was the reputation of Aurora when we started doing Broadway. And I just saw an interesting article from Denise Crosby from the Tribune Beacon. It was about the woman who right now is in Come From Away, who plays the pilot. She was in My Fair Lady, our very first production. And if memory serves, she said when she told people she was going to do a show in Aurora, people like, same thing you said, where is Aurora? And you're taking that over something else, like you're going to kill your career.
yeah.
And now we're very fortunate that we've got this reputation because we have this amazing Jim Cordy and all the other folks, Trent Stork and the creative team that is here and the work that we do. And we're known nationally for it. And so it's crazy that downtown Aurora's turned into this kind of epicenter for the arts and theater.
Truly, truly remarkable. And you absolutely all should be credited. We have Jim Cordy. I interviewed him a few weeks back, and he's going to be, by the time this episode airs, his will have been part of we're calling our Jeff's Week, leading up to the Jeff Awards on the 29th of September. But his will be the last of 5 episodes we're dropping that week leading up to the Jeffs. And while we're talking about the Jeffs, I want to chat about Paramount's past wins. You guys are dominating this year's nominations with a record-breaking 26 awards, which is not only breaking your previous record, but I think the all-time record in Jeff's history of nominations. Do you guys feel any pressure to maintain that level of quality, or at least the number of nominations from year to year? Or do you feel as though there's got to be more of a carefully crafted season when you're building it for more of a commercial outcome, financially speaking?
I think we try to find the balance of commerce and art. And I think all the theaters face the exact same thing, right?
Right.
And Tim does a really good job, I think, of balancing those and bringing stuff to our audience that challenges them. Some that most of the people have never seen Come From Away, which is on our stage right now as I'm talking, and it's amazing. And it's this beautiful show, but a majority of our folks have never seen that show before and stuff. We're also doing South Pacific, which is obviously well-known and an iconic piece and those kind of things. Or last year we did Frozen, and Frozen's Frozen, like Frozen's the Rolling Stones of musical theater. Boom. Like you're going to sell out everywhere you go on stuff. And I think the cool thing for us, from sitting in creative meetings and just watching our creative staff talk, I don't think anybody feels the pressure of Jeff's. I think what they feel the pressure is how do we take this? How do we make this our own? And how do we elevate it from what we've done in the past on things? And, in doing so, how are we still telling whatever that story is that we're telling, whether it's about Elsa and her sister, or whether it's about the folks and Come From Away or whatever else. And so I think that passion that they have to do right by all those different elements is the, perfect combination that leads to those Jeff Awards for them on stuff. And it's the same thing for the costumers, the props folks, the set designers, the projectionists, the orchestrations, everything.
When you guys are combining all of those elements together now, and this may be Tim Rader, or this may be Jim Cordy, is it more of a budgetary decision? Is it more of a collaboration of the artistic and tell us a little bit about that process?
Sure. So, when we're talking about shows and we're talking right now about, our 26, 27 season, and Tim's having conversations with different folks within our organization. He's having a conversation with Adam, who's our vice president of production, to talk about one, because Adam's really well read on shows, talk about his input on, we're looking at this, this, and this. What do you think of these shows? Now let's talk about the size of the shows, what you think the production costs will be, et cetera. He'll talk to Cordy about the same thing. Can we cast it? How do you feel? Can we do justice to the show, et cetera? He'll talk to Trent. So he'll talk to different elements within our artistic side. And then he'll come to myself. He'll come to Hollis, who's our senior marketing director. We'll talk to group sales with Melissa and Joel and say, hey, so next question is, can we sell this show?
Yeah.
Like, what do we think is realistic on stuff? Do we have the audience? Can we find a new audience, et cetera? And so he'll take all of those elements into consideration. And at the end of the day, most of the time, everybody's on the same page when it comes to picking shows. But at times when, we've got a time, what are we going to do? Tim Rader's the guy who makes the final decision on it. And I will say, for a guy who comes from a small town, a farm town in Iowa, like, the dude knows his stuff. He knows his place. He's got a good feel for the market, all those kind of things. Yeah. And it's funny, I tell this story all the time. When we were looking at doing Little Mermaid years ago, I was in the room and I said, hey, I was a marketing director for what then was a division of Walt Disney Companies. Disney famously bombed at doing Little Mermaid, not just once, but twice. Like, the first evolution, I think, was with the little wheelies. Remember those things, the shoes with the wheels?
Yeah.
To make that look like you're underwater. I'm like, and if the most iconic driving force in entertainment can't get it right, why is a theater in Aurora, Illinois going to do it? And Tim said, we've got a great idea. We're going to do these puppets, et cetera. And, I'm thinking like sock puppets doing this. And it ends up being this spectacular show, to the point where the head of Disney Theatricals called Chris Jones when he read his review in the Tribune and said, are you telling me this is as good as blah, blah, blah? And he's like, come out and see it for yourself. He flew out, fell in love with it. We started a relationship with Disney. We've worked closely with them ever since on stuff. And so I think, like, Disney couldn't get it right, but we did. And we thought outside the box of how we did it and imagined it, et cetera, and stuff. And so that's all credit to those amazing folks. And it all starts with Rader, who pieced this team together, right? Yeah. Without him, man, he's the guy who said, we need accordion, we need this, and we need that. And he put it all together, and here we are.
Wow. And I'm impressed that you actually reach out to group sales and you reach out to, other people in the organization, not just sort of the creative types that get, prominent position in the playbill. You really do reach out to the full organization to get everyone's buy-in on your season. Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, there's times we'll also reach out to some of our subscribers, longtime subscribers, et cetera, and say, hey, we're thinking about this show. What do you think? And call and have a conversation with people. Like, we try to do as much as we can, and everybody does their homework and brings it to the table so we can, because they're not cheap shows, and if it doesn't sell, you got a problem on your hands. You know what I mean? That's the other portion of it. So yeah, we've been very fortunate with everybody doing their homework and collaborating and getting behind it. And once we go, like, everybody's on the same page. Let's make it happen. Yep. Let's sell tickets. Let's do what we need to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about your improv background and how that helps you in your day-to-day in marketing. Because I'm sure there's got to be a lot of times when you've had to think on your feet if maybe a marketing pitch you thought was going to be a slam dunk goes south and you have to sort of pivot. And also let's even go further. I mean, you're a dad, like I'm a dad. Being a father can't be any of a bigger improv game than anything in life, right? So I'm just curious, the things you learned in your improv training and how you apply those to both your personal and professional life.
So funny you asked that, because last night I literally was thinking about this, that last evening I took Sam, who plays goalie for Chicago Rush, to soccer practice. Will and I, our 19-year-old, were at the gym. And then we got Sam, came home, I made dinner, did some work, I'm exhausted. And Will came up and was like, hey, Dad, you want to play a little Xbox and WWE? And I literally thought for a second, like, Yes, I do. And yes, and we sat there and had a blast. And it was one of those that even though I was exhausted, if I didn't say yes and give it a chance, I wouldn't have had that time with him. And so I think like that is the basis of all improv, right? The yes hand, the most simplistic rule in improvisation. And that's in the personal life. And I think work wise, improv really has helped me in a variety of ways. Like one of the skill sets you have as an improviser is I could be doing a scene on this side of the stage, a split scene could be going on the other side of the stage. I'm in the midst of my scene. I can listen to everything that's going on over here and I take it all in. And then it helps you problem solve or where you going next with your scene, et cetera, and stuff. I'll sit in meetings and man, I listen to what everybody says. I watch people's body language, et cetera, and things. I'll stop people and be like, hey, you said this, but I'm not fully buying it because blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And we'll have a bigger discussion on stuff. When I'm writing or when I talk to people about writing, like getting out of your writer's block, improv helped me do that. Like you just got to take that leap. You got whatever's in my head, I get it down on paper, I get it out, I can come back and, re-edit it. And so I think right across the board in my professional life and my personal life, it's just paid dividends, man. It's challenged me to they made me comfortable after how I did it for like 15 years and I taught it and directed it and those kind of things that yes, there's not a day I don't use some form of my acting or improv skills.
That's incredible. Now, very similar to that question, you and I both sort of have a history of just saying fuck it and going for things, right? And seeing how they stick. Give us a little bit about your philosophy of the benefits of just going for it and the pros and cons that maybe you didn't see coming when you're going for that thing that everybody thought you were crazy to try.
Yeah, I think I can't say it enough, and we try to instill it in our kids as well, right? And the reality is, and it kind of also goes back to what you're saying about improv, man. If you don't give it a shot, then you'll never know what's going to happen on stuff. I remember I was scared to death to apply for this job for the Disney marketing director. But the reality is, I'm like, hey, I've done all this stuff up to this point. There's a bunch of stuff I don't know. And it was long before I was even doing improv, but like I'll fake my way through until I figure it out. But fuck it, what can go bad? Let me at least go and send in a resume and hopefully get an interview and go from there on stuff. And so I always go, look, the things that you have done in your life, whether you realize it or not, have probably helped you prepare for whatever that next fucking thing is that you may be interested in doing. You just don't realize it right now. And I learn that all the time on stuff, whether it's in your professional life or your personal life. And then, it's the learning experience and making sure you're comfortable enough to ask people for help, surround yourself with people who are willing to help you or support you, and I look back and go, hey, you are a really good example of, just fuck it, go for it. Because let's face it, number one, when you're an actor, it's a business, but a lot of people don't realize you're your own business person and you got to treat everything like a business, right? You went from doing Jersey Boys and did that run in Chicago and, you toured with other shows, et cetera, and stuff. And then you decided you wanted to do your own one-person show and like scariest thing in the world you can ever do. Yeah. And I happened to do a one-person show and it was a show that I wrote and was scripted about my parents. And same thing, scared to death. But I'm like, all right, let's just put my toe in the water and first have the conversation, which we did on stuff. Yeah. Then you tried to hash it out. You started working through it. Like you put a thing together. We talked, you talked to other people. And then finally that fuck it day comes where you're like, here we go, man. And you did it at Metropolis. And it was great. And all these years, how many years later, decade, 15, 20 years later, you got the 4 C notes going, et cetera, and stuff. Yeah. None of that happens unless you decide I'm jumping off today and I'm going to go for it. And at least have that very first conversation about it. So, man, I'm a firm believer because otherwise there's so many people I know who've got those, I wish I would have done this, and that regret. Man, I don't want to get old and lay on my deathbed and go, I wish I did this and I should have done this, or I should have asked this person out, et cetera, and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for our listeners who, as I said earlier, you and I have a big history, and that history really started when I launched that debut concert at Metropolis. You were so gracious and heard that this was an idea I was thinking about, and you invited me in and we chatted, as you said. And, even after the concert, you said, "Hey, why don't you come back up? I've got a couple of notes from your concert that I only want to give you to help you improve the property." And you were so gracious to me. And to this day, I mean, once the Four C notes sort of took off, the solo concert went by the wayside for many, many years because the Four C notes was just keeping me so busy. And now the last couple of years, I've been bringing it back. And I look back at some of those notes and just to remind myself, like, it's got to be kept short. Keep this speaking while the stories are important, keep them concise, get to the next song, and keep the momentum going of the evening. And the concert has taken all forms, right? Like I've done it at festivals where it's like 2 hours of mostly singing with little bits just connecting the dots. And when it's more of a performing arts center feel, the stories are back in there, but they're really much more concise and to the point. Because that was something you told me way back then. And if it wasn't for that first opportunity to do the solo concert, the Four Seats wouldn't even exist. So I thank you, as you know, I'm indebted to you for that. Yeah.
Well, you're a talented cat, man, and it's talent, it's hard work, it's perseverance, and it's just knowing like, hey, some days you know how it goes. You walk off stage and be like, man, that did not go well. But
Yeah,
instead of
sometimes.
folding, right, it's taking notes and figuring it out and tweaking it and getting back out there again. Because
Yeah.
a lot of this is not the business for people who aren't used to failing because
Yeah.
and you can give the best audition in the world and still didn't get that role. That doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means it wasn't right for you. But man, it takes a certain kind of person to get up every time you don't get that role. You get cast one out of every 10 times or whatever it is on stuff. Got to keep
Yeah.
going. And in the meantime, got to keep finding a way to earn a living on top of it, man.
For sure. Yeah. This is actually a really great transition for my next question. Now, a few weeks back, sadly, Paramount was given a bit of a financial blow by the city of Aurora. Many of our listeners may or may not be familiar with what all went down. I was kind of familiar with it until I saw an article online about really the context behind what had gone down. So, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of detail as to what you all learned and how you're moving ahead.
So, what you're referring to is we had a reduction in our staff up to 20%. But what it came out of was under the previous administration, and I happened to be in the meeting at the time, that the mayor at the time had told Tim as we were putting our budget together, this is the amount of subsidy that we will be giving you for the 26 season. And that's what Tim worked on the budget, put it together, went from there. That administration didn't get reelected. New administration came in. And number one, they had said, look, there wasn't even a line item in the budget for it. We didn't know any different on stuff. We were just told this would happen. And it doesn't mean that wasn't going to happen. It was just at the fact he was said there wasn't anything in the budget at the time. We're having our own financial situation in the city of Aurora. And so we're not going to be able to give that amount. We'll probably be, if we do, we'll give about the reduction in about 65% of what you're planning on getting on stuff.
Wow.
And so, we did was we unfortunately closed the Bold series that we started a couple of years ago, reduced staff across the board. We're been working on tightening up expenses, looking for other sources to increase revenue. And so, we're going to get through it. And it was a blow, but we've lived through hard times before. And, prior to COVID, we never got a subsidy from the city for anything. That we were, self-existent on development and on ticket sales. And so our goal is we're going to get back there and we're going to do that whole thing. Yes, it's going to take a little tightening of the bootstraps. But and it's unfortunate because there are a lot of great dedicated people that unfortunately aren't here right now because of it. But hopefully, as time goes on and we rebuild and we get back up there and we can, start bringing people back and going from there.
Well, we'll definitely keep the Paramount in our good thoughts and know that you guys are going to push forward and deliver the quality theater that you're known for. And really, at the end of the day, try and bring back some of those employees that were lost in the sort of collateral damage. So you've been around the Chicagoland area a long time. Tell us a bit about some of the theater experiences you've seen or have been a part of that have stayed with you all this time? You think about, wow, that was really such a special moment in my career here. Or maybe even as an audience member, it doesn't need to be a personal experience.
Got auditioned at Steppenwolf and got called in, and it was Tracy Letts was directing a show. So I got called in specifically, and I can't remember the name of the show, to actually to understudy a role. And man, I'll always remember, because I used to be a Steppenwolf subscriber. And so, like, never in a million years that I ever think, especially when I was an improviser, that I would even get the time of day at Steppenwolf. You know what I mean? Like Steppenwolf Goodman at the time being the pinnacle of those kind of things and stuff. And I remember how absolutely scared to death I was. And there was a good friend of mine who was helping me prep for it. His name was Rob Mellon. And Rob was a great actor and director in Chicago. And he gave me the greatest piece of advice. He was like, hey, just so you know, everybody in that room wants you to rock it and succeed because they're looking for somebody, right? And they're hoping anybody who walks through there, and everybody walks through there is unbelievably talented to make their life easier. So understand that. Like, you're not going to fail. You know the material. You know what you're doing on stuff, whether you get it or not. And there could be any of a million reasons you don't get that role. It's not because you were good or what, because you were bad. It could be the fact of you were too young, you were too whatever on stuff. And so it was interesting for him to tell me, like, hey, they're rooting for you. They want you. They're not in there. They're not an adversary. So just know that and walk in and do it. I didn't get the role, but it was so cool walking through those doors and going through that whole thing on stuff. One of my favorite experiences was I accidentally auditioned for a musical. It was Bronzeville that they did in Chicago. And so I got called in. And so I came in, I read a couple of sides, and they liked what I did on the sides. And so then they said, look, I'm going to the theater, and you'll see the choreographer and the music director there. And then, you know, you'll start working there. And I was like, oh, you know what? I was reading for the non-singing, dancing part. And they're like, this is a musical. Everybody sings and dances. I'm like, well, I don't. They're like, no, you do. So
you didn't ever do any of those musical bits at Second City?
Well, you know, like when I was with, you always do a singing number. And when I was with Inside Vladimir, we were known as a musical group. So one part of our opening was, but I'm not singing and I'm humming and whatever else. And so I thought, okay, we'll give this a shot. Walk in. Now people have special shoes on and they change clothes and they're in this dance stuff. And I'm in, you know, jeans and whatever. And so we get up there and the music director is working with us and he's going down the line. He asked me what key I sing in, which I have absolutely no idea whatsoever. So I sing a little bit for him. He tells me what it is. We go through some choreography. We work on all this stuff. So we're doing a number and then we are going to line up. And he said, look, what I'd love to have you do is we're just going to go down the line and each one of you get like 30 seconds of your own little solo in that and give us your own, you know, personal, whatever it's going to be on stuff. And so amazing, beautiful voices are coming down the line and I'm scared shitless. And we get to me and I can't think of anything. And of course I was an improviser. So the only thing I can think of is do this Whitney Houston thing where I just take my jaw and go like this a bunch and I'm doing this and holding. And I do it and I finish it and go from there. And I thought, oh, that's it. I'm dead in the water. I finished the audition and that night I was sore. Like I've never gone to an audition like that before.
Whole sense.
Respect for musical theater.
Yeah.
And sure enough, 2 days later, the casting director calls and says, look, we want to offer you the role. And I literally go, you gotta be fucking kidding me. He's like, no. I'm like, he's like, you've got the groundwork to sing. You just need help. And we're going to help you with that. And you've got movement and you can and I was a quick study from being an athlete. So like I got some of the stuff. It wasn't I was doing overly complicated moves to begin with.
Sure.
And so in the long run, I ended up turning it down only because I got cast as a lead in an Anne Ryan play they were doing the night of January 16th. So, but I accidentally, and years later and ended up going to Broadway. So there you go. Yes.
Oh my God. That is
So
hysterical.
yeah, it was a super cool experience. And it was one of those where I will say for a second, I thought I should just bow out of here. Nobody's going to know the difference because I'm going to fail anyhow. But I was like, screw it. And I think like that was one of the coolest things about my entire acting and improv. I come from the South Side, so you got stereotypes about who you are and what you do and
Yeah, sure.
rough and tumble. And yeah, I got in fights and blah, 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 and all this stuff. But when I started improv, nobody knew me. And it gave me the ability to just be another side of me that I normally wouldn't be. Then I got into doing scripted work and did shows and stuff that I never in a million years thought I'd be able to do. And then there was this next element to it of, trying out for a musical. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, I kind of held my own on stuff. I'm not going to win any kind of Jeff Award, but it was super cool. And again, like I truly had no understanding of what it took to audition for a musical. And
Yeah.
I will say, like, and especially here now, and I get to watch at times, rehearsals and those kind of things. Like, man, that is a job and a half. Anybody want to talk about being an athlete? Like, come to a rehearsal for a musical any day of the week
Yeah.
and see what that's all about, man.
Yeah. I just had an interview with an artist that's actually one of the understudies in the Paramount's $1 Million Quartet, Michael Kurowski.
All
And
right, yeah.
he plays 4 or 5 instruments, not in the show, but in life. And one of the questions I asked him was, man, being a musical theater performer is already a marathon. Then you add a whole layer of being an instrumentalist on top of that. It's just I don't, because I don't play an instrument professionally. I just can't even imagine the amount of physical and mental exhaustion from doing a show 8 times a week, layering on the aspect of playing an instrument. I just, it blows my mind.
Yeah. Or you get something like Once, where
Which she
like
also did on tour. Yeah.
you're singing, you're dancing, you're playing an instrument, like, you're acting, all of the above. Like, oof.
Yeah. Um, so Jim, tell us, how has your life been different than from what you imagined it would be?
Yeah, I will. It's been different from writing things. When I was in high school, like I said, I played football and baseball, wasn't a great student, smoked a bunch of pot, and my mom got terminally ill when I was in 8th grade. And so my entire high school career, she was battling ovarian cancer and went down pretty quickly on stuff, right? So truthfully, at that point, like I didn't give a shit about a bunch of stuff. And a lot of people where I come from, you end up in one of a couple of things. You end up in the trades, which is totally fine. Nothing wrong with it, right? Working construction or, carpenter, bricklayer, blah, blah, whatever, that's on stuff. Or there's a bunch of factories over there from, Tootsie Roll to Campbell to whatever else. And so I very much thought like that, some version of that's going to be my life. I got a 13 on my ACT test. And yes, and as my wife likes to point out, the monkey got a 12 because you get 1 point for signing your name. It couldn't sign its name or it would be even with mine. And so, like, I went to junior college, then I played football in junior college. I kind of got my stuff together. And, when it was all said and done, I ended up, loving college and doing well and working in women's athletics and having like all these experiences from, working in women's athletics at ISU. And like, I literally worked with the legends who got Title IX pushed through, who are responsible for the women's NCAA basketball tournament, who are responsible for women to play full court basketball, because people don't realize in the old days, they thought women's hearts were smaller. They were not allowed to play full court. There was a woman there, Melinda Fisher and Jill Hutchinson, did their PhD on the fact of no, same size hearts, everything's good. And they changed the way that basketball is played for women to get full court basketball, et cetera. So like I had all these amazing people around me who always encouraged you to do stuff. You know what I mean? I go to Disney. I worked in trade and consumer shows around the world. I end up working at Metropolis. Like I keep going. I feel kind of like Forrest Gump, the luckiest dude in the world, right? I just keep running and I keep having these different experiences and meeting different people, like, meeting you or other people at different places. Now I'm, also oversee a 7,000 person outdoor concert venue and get to produce shows and do those kind of things. So yeah, it is totally different from what I thought my life was going to be. And truthfully, there's a point in my life where I also was abusing coke in my 30s. I'd had a ton of money, didn't care about it, and truthfully didn't think I was going to make it to 40. And I didn't care whatsoever and was having the time of my life. And I've kids now. I've got a wife. Like, I have this amazing, amazing experience. And I'm 64 and I feel every bit as good as I did, in my 40s on stuff. And I get up at 5 every day, go to bed at 11, and I'm excited every day to get up and do it.
Well, I'm grateful you're still here.
Yeah,
I'm sure your family is too.
I'm grateful
brother.
for you. I'm grateful for our experience together. And all these years later, here we are, dude.
Right? The third time's a charm on the podcast and everything.
No, you jinxed us.
Yeah.
You're going to die. It's going to die in post-production.
Don't say that.
The film is.
The film is, right? It's going to burn
We'll do
up.
this again. Start it over.
Hey, any parting words for our listeners? You had a real nice speech in the last one we did. Hopefully you could remember about people supporting the arts.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I say this all the time, that look, whether it's us here or whether it's a black box in Chicago or Drury Lane or Broadway in Chicago or the four C notes, any of that stuff, especially now, I think we live in a time where we know that we live in a time, right, that everybody seems to be diametrically opposed in one way, shape, or form. And it was Jim Cordy who said it to me one day, and we were just sitting there talking about theater over a cup of coffee. And he said, the great thing about theater is you walk into a place like the Paramount, you're surrounded by strangers, you're sitting right next to somebody, chances are you don't know, the lights go down, the orchestra goes up, and for the next 2 hours, you're laughing with that person or crying with that person or taking this emotional roller coaster with them. Mm-hmm. You may talk a little bit about at intermission, say a couple nice words at the end, but you've all had this, shared experience together. And I think that's it, man. Like, we're missing those kind of shared experiences. And without the arts, without giving our kids the chance to have the arts, and I'm talking about a kid who, comes from the south side of Chicago, who my parents went once a year and is still stuck with me, right? Hello, Dolly. Like, it's so important that the arts can add so much to your life. And whether, you start when you're 30 like I did, or I don't know when you started getting into the arts, but it was probably substantially younger than me.
6.
6. You know what I mean? But here we are today, and we still have this common bond in our different experiences on stuff. And I think that without the arts, man, we're in trouble. And without having, and I also say concerts, right? And it's not just plays and musicals, and it's concerts and whatever else it may be, paintings, etc. Like, arts are so important to our daily lives. And I think the scary thing is it goes away and it doesn't come back. We watched so many theaters close after COVID. And there was an estimate at one point that 50% of all theaters in the United States would close after COVID. Oh. And once you're gone, as we know it, don't come back. And slowly but surely things start disappearing. Go out and support whatever that art is on stuff. Man, if there's a Husker on the corner, stop for a couple seconds and listen to them. They're an artist. They're playing music or they're doing whatever on stuff. And if you got a buck or 50 cents, throw it in and support them, man. Because look, we either make it together and we break it together. And everybody in the arts, it's the same thing, even though it's competitive because everybody's going for, different roles. Man, it's a time, especially now, that we all got to work together and keep it going.
Yeah, they could be the great equalizer for sure. A lot of those reasons you mentioned. Listen, I can't thank you enough for sticking it out with me this third time around. I consider you a friend and a mentor, and I love you and your family so much. And I'm really just honored that you agreed to join me on the podcast. Hopefully our listeners got as much joy out of listening to it as I did.
Yeah, I love you. I admire you. And I will say this, that you're, again, the example, right? You've done these other artistic things, and now you have this new artistic endeavor. And that's the thing about artists. Like, they keep finding new ways to produce art, and you are a shining example of it. So keep it going, man. We need podcasts like yours and people like you. Keep getting the word out for us.
Thanks, brother. I sure will. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.
I love you, man. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us at the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Chicago Theater Makers Podcast is a production of Spirit Art LLC, and our podcast theme music is by Paul Langford. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please drop us a note at our website, ChiTheaterMakersPodcast.com. That's ChiTheater, makers with an S, podcast.com. We hope you enjoyed spending time with us as much as we enjoyed spending it with you, and we'll see you on the board soon.